Yeah, that's great. That's nice. That kind of support. I wish I had a standing ovation in my masterclass. That's great. Very nice job, Alton. Well played. You have very nice intonation, and you're honoring what's on the page so nicely. Yeah, it's really good. I want to talk a little bit about character, not unlike what we were talking about in the Bach, and what comes from not the ink on the page.
Not the ink on the page?
Yeah.
I guess like a bit of maybe a bit of push and pull.
That's great. What else?
Maybe like crescendoing in specific places instead of like just doing the same thing throughout.
Correct. Yeah. That there are sort of unwritten dynamics, unwritten rubatos. We're a little bit. Composers are limited by notation, right? We can do our best with sixteenths and triplets and crescendos and decrescendos, but it's a little bit limiting, right? It doesn't tell us exactly what can bring creativity, or exactly what can bring the character, or exactly what can bring differences that sets your performance apart from others, right? Because, why do we have, this piece has probably been recorded 157 times, right? Why do they record it different? Because everyone thinks, oh, okay, I want to show my special version, right? Or I'm going to do with this approach with this orchestra. I'm going to tune differently. So each person has to have their own commitment to what's on the page, then your own, the Alton stamp goes on. So I want to talk about a few things. It's quite a joyful movement, right? G major is very open, it's very happy. How can we show joy in our sound?
Play it loud, louder in some places.
Is it louder in some places? And what does a left hand mean? So can I be joyful in piano? Yeah. Be joyful in piano, right? So I think joy comes from how we treat the sound, and particularly how we treat the left hand. So if I play... the joy is coming from the instrument. So for me, a lot of joy in the sound comes from what I think about as spinning the sound. And so for me, a lot of that comes from it has to do with how I treat especially the middle of the bow and the vibrato. So that the vibrato isn't too still and that the bow isn't two-dimensional. So this is kind of we're going next level here. But if I think about the bow as something three-dimensional instead of two-dimensional, I'm scooping into the sound rather than letting the bow be here. So the difference between, that's kind of two-dimensional. I'm keeping the bow on the top of the string, but see the difference? So it opens by the way I pull the inside of the sound through this part of the bow. Can you just try that first chord? Left
So,
hand and
in what
scoop
direction?
through. I want you to think about this part of the bow, the middle, how you pull through that. Find as if you're scooping, like you're like an ice cream scoop through the sound right there. Okay, what if you have a tall posture? What if you have a good posture? Big tall posture? Yeah, you're kind of here.
Yeah.
Good. Notice the thumb comes around a little bit, not too, yes, good. This comes around a little bit. Good, tall. And scoop through the sound. Ooh, that was better. I think if you tweak your technique just a little bit, I don't want to overhaul your setup because that's very specific. But if you have a tall posture, bring your elbow around, yeah, make sure it doesn't hang out too far back here. Because if I'm here and my thumb is around, I don't have good access to the rest of the instrument. But if I'm here, it's much easier to move, okay? So just think about that a little bit. The way you just played that chord was awesome. So because the sound became so much more open, so much more dimensional. So when we talk about this like three-dimensional sound in the bow, it's like you're scooping through, like if you think about a scooping of the ice cream, that idea. One more time, same thing. Tall posture, open, open. Elbow around. Yes. Better. And if you think about, she plays yum, bottom, bottom, yum. If you breathe and lean into that first chord, would you mind just a couple of beats before? Yeah. That's better, yes. So which yum, bum, bum. And then as we play through that first phrase, I want you to think about how we treat this part of the bow particularly, middle to upper part. So if I play, it's good, it's correct. But if I play, can you try that? So I'm just putting a little bit of push and pull. I'm really focusing on this part of the bow to find how the sound will sparkle out, how that openness goes outward. Can you try? Okay, and what if we don't let the bow, I want you to try something, it's going to be weird, but do it anyway. Put slurs where there aren't slurs, and put separates where there aren't separates. So it's going to look like this. Make it up. It doesn't matter where it goes. Just do not what's there.
Okay.
Bro. So by doing that, by doing what's not there, you're sort of undoing the automatic pilot of the bow. Because what can happen is where you sort of get each beat kind of become its own thing.
So
But
you want so I don't go to like complete autopilot?
exactly. So and this goes for everybody. If you ever feel like you're getting into autopilot, oh my bow's just going, my left hand's just going, play what's not there. Change, go backwards going, put in a slur where there's not a slur, put separate where there's a slur. If it's groups of 4, do groups of 5. If it's groups of 8, do groups of 7. Because you're basically popping the brain out of what's sort of expected in the body, and then it trains you to think differently, so you can think a longer line. So where are we going in this first phrase? Where do you want to actually aim for?
Going like direction?
Yeah. Where's the first, like if this were a paragraph, where's the first punctuation? I think that's right, exactly. Yeah, so we have to think of music like writing. So we have a paragraph, and in the paragraph we have sentences. Within the sentences we have phrases. Within the phrases we have words, and then within that we have letters, right? So in this way, maybe the notes are the letters. Then we have certain phrases that become where there might be a pause in the way we speak, because otherwise it just feels like we are robots and we never change any intonation in our playing, right? There's a reason why we have intonation, especially in, I know many people in this room speak Mandarin, right? And the way you pronounce something changes the meaning, right? So you have to have that kind of intention in the way you play music too. And if we just use the bow as, okay, I'm going up, down, then sometimes it can get too accented. We don't feel, okay, the intention of the phrase is to go to there. So the feeling, okay, good, I understand that that's the first comma, maybe semicolon, colon, whatever. But if I play, then it feels much more like I had an overall intention rather than the beats being too accented. Can you try that one? Go all the way for your intention. Are you feeling tension?
Here.
In your bicep. You're so strong.
No.
See if you can. So this is also an important thing. Playing with the natural weight of your body is really, really important. Because if we start to put tension in and we think, okay, I have to play loud, so okay, go on. And then if I try to put torque in here and everything is tight, the sound actually will be smaller. Versus if I think, okay, my arm is actually very heavy. If I use that to my advantage, the difference between that sound and is quite different, right? So think about opening, let yourself be free, flexible, use the weight of your body. Good. And what if we add the left hand now? Phrase. Let's put it together with piano now and see if you can show us the whole journey until that beat. Maybe just from a couple of bars. Yeah, that's getting better. So I want you to think about how to dimensionalize your sound. I know that's kind of a weird concept. But the difference between and I'm thinking about the left hand and how I'm moving through the middle of the bow. Good, so let's go into the next section a little bit. So what's this section? So what's happening in the character here? We're still in forte, right?
If we use like analogy, it's kind of like the explanation.
That's great. I think that's awesome. So we have this sort of antecedent concept of phrase. This is explaining what we just talked about, yeah? So I think instead of okay, good, I played my triplets, but maybe it's more, there's something more creative inside, and we can play around with the dynamics that aren't there, right? He doesn't give us very much. So maybe it's not perfect, that the triplets are not exactly even, that the slurs aren't exactly the same for every bow stroke, and maybe we come away in that guy. Maybe a little bit of the diminuendo. Can you try that? Good. And what if there's vibrato on the, what if we think about the singing? Because I find a lot of your long notes sort of, they're just very static in the left hand, so that I don't feel motion through the phrase. If I play, everything feels a little bit flat, but doesn't have to be identical, but there has to be life, I think. Okay? But vibrate on your four, vibrate on your four. believing you. You can also try second position. I have a broken fourth finger, so I play. Then cross, then shift down. What?
So 1-1.
Mm-hmm. Okay, try again.
Oh, I have no memory.
See if you can open this too. That's important because if I'm here, my thumb's closed. I don't have good motion, right? Because the violin is up against the palm. But if I come open here, space under there. I don't have as much access to the fingerboard. So if you open elbow a little bit more forward, make sure that you always have daylight in between your thumb and your palm. Great. And what if the triplets have a lot of spokenness? So the slur is very smooth in the bow, but the left hand is very active, so that the character comes through. If I play it,
So less sloppy and more precise?
no, it's not sloppy, it's that there's more articulation in the left hand. Yeah? Can you try? So it's a little more even. 1, 2, ready, and. That's very nice. Can we put together with piano?
Do I know that?
Yeah, on the beginning.
Oh, on the
So play around at home thinking about what the different, if you have tension just from that, that's not good.
No, it's just, my hand's just really stiff.
Your hand's really stiff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shouldn't be stiff from 8 bars of playing. So I want you to think about where you're finding tension. Listen to your body. If you're finding tension in the hand, ask yourself where the tension's coming from, what adjustments can be made. In general, if you think about the fingers are very strong, right? If you do that, you have a lot of power without actually having to add any tension. If you think about that kind of activity on the fingerboard, you can have a lot of power without squeezing. And likewise in the right hand, the arm is very heavy. If you use the bow, use the weight of your arm, it helps. Okay? So I want to talk about the development a little bit, and then we can call it a day. So have you talked about the form of this piece at all? It's okay if you haven't. You've talked about it? Do you know what the sections are called?
I don't know. I think the last one's like recapitulation.
Mm-hmm. Good.
exploitation, development, and
Recap. Exactly. Yeah. Recap is great. The last one. The beginning where we just started is called the exposition, and then the middle is the development, right? The term development, we don't necessarily know all the details of the form, but the term development I think is important because what it tells us is what he's doing with the music, right? So when you hear the word development, what does it mean? Like if you're outside of music, what does development mean?
Like it develops like the main idea.
Yeah.
To become something more clear.
Or it can be little fragments of. The other thing that's very important about developments is that you're always moving harmonies. In this, in the exposition, you're almost always on 1 or 5, right? You're always hanging out in G major or D major, G major, D major, right? Those are your choices. When you get into the development, we start going to weird places. Whoa. And I think we can show that more. So that how we develop the motives and how we develop the harmony is important. Can you start from the development ones?
With piano? Or just like
With piano, yeah, let's play together. think then that surprise has to come a little bit more boldly. Okay, so let's talk about this phrasing here. If I play, if this just becomes sort of an exercise from the beginning, right? Bigger job showing this crescendo throughout. When you get there, I think we need to have so when we arrive, it's like, oh, okay, we earned that arrival. Okay, here's a good tool. Piano should never be empty. Piano doesn't just mean quieter. Piano should have just as much impact and as much importance as forte. It's just in a smaller package. What's your favorite candy bar? You don't eat candy? Ever?
Of course.
Okay, who eats candy in this audience? Okay, what's your favorite candy bar? Hershey's, okay. So there's a king size Hershey's, right? And inside there's like 20 pips inside, right? Then there's a normal size Hershey's, maybe like 15 pips inside. Then they have the little guys, called like a mini maybe. And then there's a single one, right? Just one bite, you pop it in. When you eat the one bite, it's not different from one bite of the king size, right? Like when they made the baby one, the single bite, it wasn't like, oh, we're gonna leave out the sugar, right? Or they're like, oh, we're gonna leave out the milk, right? It's just as delicious, but it's in one bite. That's the idea of piano, that it has to be just as delicious, but in a smaller package. So piano doesn't just mean, okay, I'm gonna it has to be just as characterful. So you get there. Can you try that one? Go from here, and when you get there, I want you to be mini, like a little. I know you don't eat candy, but imagine you do. Character. Yeah. So I think you can do more to show the opening of it. And when you want to have character in piano, make sure you're not using too much bow and that there's a lot of contact. That honey thing we were talking about earlier. So as you increase the sound, the honey doesn't move. Okay? Let's do that and then go on a little bit here. And when you get to here, make sure that it's not angry. That it's bold. Not too much pressure, and I think sing those guys at the end. This will be the last thing we do. Let's do with piano and show lots of character. Don't forget about your left hand and your posture. That's from the development. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Beginning development?
Yeah.
Take us on a journey. And ask what can be done to alleviate that. Really nice job. Thank you.